Disney Plus brings together fans of all ages. This podcast brings three adults who are also kids at heart together to talk about Disney Plus. Join Scott, the Magic Genie producer, Regina, the sassy Megara of the group, and Nathan, the gentle but grumpy Brit, as they bring you news, reviews, special guests, and discussions on the Disney Plus Streamcast.
Hi, and welcome to today's episode of the Disney Plus Streamcast. I'm Scott Murray, and I'm here with Regina Davis.
Hello.
I don't know if you saw this or not, but they're starting to make announcements, or there's rumors that movies like Wonder Woman might just skip the theaters altogether with this going on and go straight to digital.
Oh, man.
And I'm thinking, oh man, that's such a theater experience for the first time. I would hate to start missing some of these movies that I've been anticipating if they decide just to go straight to digital.
Right, but at the same time, it's just something they're going to have to put it off for a long time, like foreseeable future kind of thing. And the releasing of, Frozen 2 early, so that people stuck at home could watch it. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a big deal right now. And so if you were to be able to have access to something like Wonder Woman, that's almost taking it up a notch. But I do completely agree that, there would be a loss of that cinematic experience.
Well, not to mention they got to watch Frozen 2 first in the theaters. They just got to have it at home a little sooner than they originally hoped. And it looks like actors are really needing to go back to work. Otherwise, they post videos on Twitter singing. As good intentions as that might have been, I don't really need that. Especially when you have a lot of multimillionaire celebrities singing songs about no possessions.
Yeah, I could probably hole up in any of those places pretty easily. Whereas I'm just over here sitting in my room realizing that I can actually watch the cracks in the walls grow bigger now instead of just coming home and noticing the difference.
I also saw a family, I don't know if you saw this or not, but it kind of went viral, this family who were big Disney fans and obviously couldn't go because of the park closure, decided to recreate Pirates of the Caribbean in their house.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, it was the full thing. They even had the drop. They had this, this little sled that pulled them into all the different rooms throughout the house, and then they went down the stairs. No word yet, as people watched, whether any aspect of that version of Pirates of the Caribbean offended anybody. But apparently they got inspired because they saw somebody else recreate Splash Mountain. It's pretty awesome, though. I mean, I give people a lot of credit for their creativity, and I'm glad that people are able to at least find some new things to watch and look forward to. Gosh, I think even Rise of Skywalker also came through digital a little earlier than expected. Mm-hmm. I want to say thanks to everybody who is finding time to listen to the show this week. And if you're listening and everything is safe where you are, I hope that continues. I hope everybody listening is safe and healthy as we go through this thing. As Regina mentioned, Frozen 2 hit Disney Plus early as kind of a gift for those who have obviously had to stay home, and kids have had to stay home. It gives them something to watch. So we'll be talking about that a little later on. But before we get into those discussions, we have to see about any news. Now, granted, a lot of the news right now is about coronavirus, but in order to find out if there's anything else we need to discuss in that arena, we have to talk with Nathan, which means it's what time, Regina?
It is time for News with Nathan.
I can hear you, but I won't. You know I will. I'll always bring in you, Scott. Always, Regina. How are you guys doing, my darlings? You
Much
doing
better.
All right? Fantastic. I love to hear it. We're going to accentuate the positives as the song goes for a little bit and talk about a few cool things to do with Disney Plus. We're definitely not going to talk about the 2,200 interns that were somewhat stranded after Disney canceled their internship program this year. It's not all bad news. Did you see that Onward is coming to Disney Plus like really early? April 3rd, I believe, or something like that. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so it's available, for the digital on demand right now for $20. If you wait though, and if you're a subscriber, you get it for free. Get it for free, and I'm excited for that. It's funny you're saying in the preamble into this about movies skipping the whole theatrical release window and just going straight into digital, and how relatively uncool or cool that is according to the sort of movie. Hollywood Reporter has a piece, an interview really with I guess John Fithian, who is the guy in charge of the Exhibitors Association in America, and they're cool with this because they understand that movies do have to kind of make some money back, and they're kind of at the whims of their own shareholders and their producers, much as the exhibitors are with their parents. But where they're not happy is when it skips the movie, the theaters completely.
Yeah.
And it goes straight onto online, which I guess they did with Trolls World Tour. And he said in that Hollywood Reporter thing, we will not forget this. We will not forget this, especially, and the innuendo is that with Fast and the Furious 9 coming out later on this year, that the exhibitors would just bury it and not be interested at all. So it's really interesting to see what's going to happen, both being Universal movies, I should say. That's why that's relevant. It's really interesting to see what's going to happen with that in the movie landscape in the future. For me, I think we've already established over the last year, I don't want to watch a movie with anyone else. I like watching it at home. But I do get that, especially like you said, Scott, for some of these like big tentpole releases, it'd be weird to think, even though I didn't love it, seeing Rise of Skywalker on a small screen for the first time. That would just, I don't know, that JJ shot that movie intending it to be seen that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think about how last night I had my wife watch 1917, which I saw on my own, just because I was out and about and I thought I needed something to do. That's back when you could go out somewhere, not long ago. And I just went into the movie theater to watch it, and it's a phenomenal movie. Really, really good. And I really wanted her to see it. And the plan was to go together, because I thought it was good enough to go back to the theater and see again. Well, now that's out the window, and it's already available on TV, and we watched it, and she thought it was really good, too, but I had to go imagine what that would have been like had you seen it in the theater, because it's a really good movie all the way around, but it does have a little more of a kind of a viewing emotional impact if you're watching it on that big screen in the dark.
Yeah, so lots to look forward to hitting those digital services, such as Disney+, but at the same time, you just wonder how it's going to shake up that landscape. Looking at Disney+ worldwide, they've had to push back their launch in France, where we're sitting at home in that shelter-in-place order and, getting to enjoy some of this stuff. Like people like the French are waiting. They're waiting. They've had their release date pushed back a couple of weeks from March 24th through to April 7th at the request of the French government. I guess bandwidth is kind of a thing all of a sudden with everyone working from home and everybody streaming. It's causing some congestion issues. Actually, the tech streaming services in Europe have actually got together kind of, and they've kind of agreed to pull back 4K streaming and high def streaming for a bit, just to kind of free up more bandwidth. No news of whether that's happening over here yet, but you got to think it's just around the corner. I mean, I work in a card shop, and even I'm working from home next week. That's how crazy the whole online kind of work from home thing is right now, that even people like me are going to find, who work traditional retail, are going to find something to do online. And so, you wonder how that's going to make a bit of an impact too.
Yeah, and then launching a full-blown Disney streaming service with mounds of content from the old days and the new days will be like putting gas on that fire as far as bandwidth is concerned.
Absolutely, especially when you consider the uptake that the service has had recently. Disney alone, never mind the other competition out there. Since Disney Plus's launch in November, Variety reports that approximately 50% of American households with children under 10 have already subscribed midway through the first quarter of 2020. And if you look at a slightly older demo, homes with kids 18 and under, still 42% Disney subscribers. And even 18 to 24-year-olds, 41%. Obviously, a different allure for that age bracket, less interested in the things that I guess are archival coming out from the vault. More interested in your Marvel, your Star Wars, Mandalorian, obviously the thing that we're all freaking out about. But yeah, lots and lots of people hitting that service and hitting it hard. So you wonder just when that's going to start to get pared back a little bit. Disney doing its best to weather that storm. Recently had a debt offering on the stock market. $6 billion is what they were looking for, and what I think they actually got. I think they got about 5.8 of it in their debt offering for general corporate needs, as it says, due to be paid back between 2025 and 2050. Disney stocks dropped as a result to about $150 a share or so, which apparently, according to analysts, is a really great time to buy Disney stock, if you can imagine, $150 a share, because they feel like when all this bounces back, and I have every, hope and that everything will.
Yeah.
I think we're all pretty smart, and we all think that we're just going to hunker down and everything's going to get better. Because of the loaded slate at the end of the year and in 2021, and also all those other folks who are going to make up for that lost time. They say, we waited all this time to go to Disney and we didn't get to go and this happened. Well, I'm not waiting around for the next time. We're going now. They're expecting a bumper return later on and think that stock price could go up as much as 70% before the end of 2020. So if you're into speculating, you might go and throw some money on Disney stock. It's a good time to do it. And it's a bit too rich for my blood, though. I'll probably just pay my $7 a month and enjoy my Onward in Frozen 2. And guys, that's the news. That's what I got for you this week.
Good news. Much better than the news I've been hearing lately.
Well, one thing's for sure is you can listen to a podcast and escape some of the tougher things on the news, and that's something we definitely want to do for people here. So,
and on Disney Plus.
And on Disney Plus. One of the things we're going to do when we come back is, Nathan was talking about the news. There was a news item that hit earlier last week that in some ways has been rumored for some time, and I always thought, maybe, maybe not. And then finally I see it basically reported like it's happening, and then it was confirmed. And then, of course, later on, we're going to discuss Frozen 2, which we just mentioned was released on Disney Plus a little bit early. But what's interesting about that on this podcast is all three of us watched it on Disney Plus. And not only that, it was our first time seeing it. So we'll be discussing Frozen 2.
That's next on the Disney Plus Streamcast.
All right, so as I mentioned, there was a news item that hit Twitter. I first saw it on Twitter last week, and I didn't really know what to think about it at first because I've seen this rumored for probably 3 years, give or take, and I didn't know what to think of it then. I really don't know what to think of it now in some ways, but there's a lot of reasons for that. What's fascinating to me about this story is I remember all those years ago when the Clone Wars movie came out. And I remember leaving that movie, wasn't the greatest movie in the world, but I liked Ahsoka Tano. I liked her from the get-go. And at that time, I was in the minority. All I read was how irritating she is. Poor Ahsoka. I mean, they hated the fact that, some people even hated the fact that Anakin had a Padawan, much less it was Ahsoka. And now look where we are. I feel like I was an Ahsoka fan before it was cool to be an Ahsoka fan. And so here we are, many seasons of Clone Wars later, and Ahsoka's popularity could not be higher. But what's been really interesting in the last 2 or 3 years, especially as Clone Wars ended, and then it was revived a little bit with some new stuff, and then, of course, getting this final season on Disney Plus, there's always been talk about where her story continues to go. How far into the saga does it go? How long does she live? And along the way, people started to discuss, well, what if she appeared in a live-action film? And, originally it was about a film because we didn't have Disney Plus yet. And back then, one of the early rumors was Rosario Dawson to play her. And so everybody got to talking about that. But it just all seemed to be far-fetched at the time because, for one, it's really hard to kind of imagine how challenging it would be to bring that character to life after Ashley has voiced her for so many years, and we've seen the animated version for so many years. But lo and behold, last week, it hit the internet again, only this time it was confirmed. Rosario Dawson will be playing Ahsoka Tano in Season 2 of The Mandalorian. When you saw that, what was your reaction?
I was blown away because, you know, like you said, I've had 3 years to warm up to this idea. And I liked it when I first heard a rumor about it. And it's nice that one of those things that you rumor, but you also were like, yeah, but it would be perfect though, right? It actually happens. And that's pretty rare because a lot of times, you know, these theories and these things that you read on the internet are speculation. And, you know, I know how you feel about speculation, Scott. And you usually don't even entertain a conversation about it because you're like, nope, until it's confirmed, I don't care.
Right.
Because, you know, I've been burned. And, you know, it's like I've been told so many times there's going to be a Dread 2. Stop telling me there's going to be a Dread 2.
Oh, please.
I think it's the same feeling I'm going to get whenever I see that article with, you know, if that's confirmed. It's just one of those things where you're like, oh my God, we did it, boys. And I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, and it's really, I don't know what the word is. I think it's a satisfying feeling, I suppose, to know that she's super up for it and she's been up for it for a really long time. You know, she's a fan of the character. I think it was, back on Good Morning America ages and ages and ages ago, whenever they said to her, like, oh, you're the subject of this fan campaign to get you in Star Wars. And it mentioned that, you know, the official Twitter Star Wars account was following her, which, you know, they don't follow everyone, just people of interest, but it was following her. And she was like, she's so on board, she's ready. And then you see it come to fruition. And yeah, that's super cool that it's not just someone who's been invited into that universe who doesn't really have a connection with it. And it's like, yeah, cool, a paying gig, whatever, you know. She was great as Claire Temple, and, you know, I loved her in all that stuff, all the MCU or the Marvel TV shows. And yeah, I'm psyched to see her, especially after Rebels, where, you know, the character kind of had a bit of a resurgence and was like somewhat pivotal at the very, very end there. Yeah, I'm excited to see what they're going to do with her.
One of the reasons why I kind of set it all up the way I did is just to kind of establish what kind of Ahsoka fan I am and have been all these years. I don't really know what to think of this in some ways. I agree. I think Rosario Dawson was perfect in that role, and I think she's a good actress. I don't have anything against her. I think my biggest thing is just, you know, I'm a very visual thinker, so I'm trying to imagine what this is going to look like after seeing an animated version all this time. I think this is a little trickier, I guess, because people are so attached, Ashley. Because I've seen people say, okay, fine, Rosario Dawson can be her, but we want Ashley voicing her over like somebody did for Ray Park in as Darth Maul, or voicing over David Prowse perhaps as Darth Vader. I don't know that I would want that. I mean, this is obviously going to be a completely different part of Ahsoka's career, but she's probably going to have some of those roots still that we saw from Rebels and obviously Clone Wars. What's interesting is I remember when they brought her back on Rebels, they were talking about how she's older, but she still kind of had the same voice. So now, what's Rosario Dawson going to do about that voice? I mean, because inevitably, we're going to have to be convinced that's really her. And for me, I think it's just a matter of waiting to see it, because we do that in fandom a lot. We hear an announcement like this and we tend to overreact and think there's no way that's going to work. And then we see it and then we all love it. That's happened many times. Yep. I especially think with people like Dave Filoni involved in this, I don't think they make the mistake of putting the wrong person in here to do this, considering how much the character also means to them. It's just, for me, it's hard to visualize, but I don't think she needs to have her voice done. Or some people think they should have just flat chosen Ashley to do it. I don't know if that's the answer either, and that's nothing against her. I just think it's one thing to be the voice. It's another thing to say, okay, now you're going to put the costume on and be the character and sell people on that. That's not necessarily an easy transition. Let's talk about Frozen 2, but let's start with the Frozen 2 discussion by just touching on the first Frozen movie and the massive explosion in popularity it had. And I mean, you want to talk about a highly anticipated animated sequel. I mean, I can't imagine anything in recent years with bigger hype attached to it than Frozen 2, and I'm sure Disney was equally excited to finally show fans something when that first trailer came out. I was wondering what you all thought of Frozen 1 first, because I think that plays a role in maybe what you're preparing for when you see Frozen 2. I think it's a good movie, and that's where it begins and ends. I think it was good. I don't think it was this... You look at some of the popularity of this thing and how it just really went crazy all over the place. You would think it was Star Wars in 1977 again. I don't think it was that big of a deal. I think it became, among kids especially, a fad. It's almost like the cool thing to do was to go see Frozen, maybe see Frozen 15 times in the movie theater. It was a kid fad more than anything else, and of course that helps the box office. But for me, I just thought it was a good movie. I remember my niece, who loves Frozen, loves everything Frozen, had a friend over and we were all talking about it, and I said, well, I think Tangled was a better movie. And the look on her friend's face was like I had just said the most offensive thing ever to be said. So there are some deeply passionate people, but for me, all I'll say about it was, I remember coming out thinking it was a good movie. What did you all think of the first one?
That was pretty much the extent of it for me. It's a good movie. It's not anything that really blows me away. There's obviously some moments in it that you're just like, oh, wow, this is just kind of magnificent all around. But, it's a Disney movie. I think some of it was overhyped for me. So I think that might be why I didn't respond to it as much, just because I'd been hearing so much of like, dude, Elsa's the new like best Disney princess. There's nobody that handles business like Elsa. And then I watched it and I'm like, what is she even doing though? She's not doing anything really. And so it was one of those things, but it's absolutely gorgeous. The songs are phenomenal. It's not really normally my type of thing. Show tunes in that way, sort of musical numbers don't really do it for me, as we all know. But, there's just some undeniable talent in that movie. So I can understand why it took off, because it is just ultimately just a really beautiful spectacle with a nice message too. But it's not anything that struck me in a way like Mulan or Pocahontas did, just because I don't know if that's ever going to happen again.
Well, to your point, I think probably when you experienced Mulan or Pocahontas, you were the right age for it. And I think that's something to be said for Frozen. Now, I do quite like the movie. I'm not a huge fan of the old musical theater stuff, but I find the songs like Idina Menzel's voice super aggressive, and I find it almost to the point of jarring because it's just not my scene. It's not my bag, baby. But I will say that, like you said, it's completely on point. I think the characters have a really nice sort of interplay together. But saying about why people are super into it, I think it was the first proper Disney princess movie for a few years, because I don't count Brave. Brave came out the year before, but she wasn't really a typical princess. She was a bit of a tomboy. And if you were a girly girl, Merida's not someone you get behind. You had to go back to Tangled in 2010 or Princess and the Frog in 2009 to really get on board with that. If you want a princess that had numbers, that had a little bit of a romance thing going on, that had, although Elsa arguably doesn't in this, but sweeping dresses and kind of big songs, you didn't have anyone for a bit. And so for example, for me, I like Frozen, but what I really like about Frozen is the fact that I was watching it with my child and watching her just bug out the same way that I did when I was watching sort of Star Wars, or more accurately Empire for the first time, or Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, seeing that in the movie theater and, oh my gosh, he turns into a robot. That's crazy. Michael Jackson. Or Who Framed Roger Rabbit or something like that. That same experience that I have with my dad when he enjoyed it vicariously through me, I got to do that through my little Maisie Jane. And for that, to see her sing those songs and dress up and all the rest of it, that just made the movie so much more for me. And it just inspires that love of the fandom and all that stuff. So, yeah, Frozen as itself is a really decent movie. It's really good. But again, for that generation, and kids age so quickly these days. If you're 7 years old when Frozen comes out, that is it. There is nothing else on the agenda. It's just Frozen. That is all you want. So that's why I'm a believer.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about Merida. I thought Brave was okay. I thought it was okay. And that's what I heard from most people. It was just, it was okay. It was fun. And I think that is demonstrated by the fact that when you first mentioned her, I didn't think about Brave. I thought about Merida's cameo appearance in Ralph Breaks the Internet, and how I laughed out loud that when she spoke, nobody could understand her.
Right.
So maybe that says something about Brave. I don't know. It's funny you bring up the kids versus the adults, because when they released Frozen 2 early, and it was this big deal, I saw a story a couple of days later that said not everybody's as happy about this. And the point was some parents are being driven crazy because now that it's available, it's the only thing that's playing in the house for like 10 hours straight. So there's some adults out there that are probably getting worn down by Frozen 2, just like they were getting worn down by Let It Go when the first one came out. So I thought that was just kind of funny that, you never think about that. It's like, oh, good, they're going to have something to watch. Oh, wait a minute, this is all they're going to want to watch. So, and, kids are like that, though. I mean, you've mentioned Roger Rabbit. For heaven's sakes, my brother watched Roger Rabbit at least 3 times a day for about 4 or 5 months straight. So that's just the way kids are. When they love something, they got to watch it a lot. But on the other side of this, we all saw Frozen 2 for the first time when we watched it on Disney Plus this past week. Now that we've had a chance to hear what everybody thought of the first one, Regina, what did you think about the second one?
I worried that it wouldn't be as good as the first, and it wasn't. But it wasn't awful. It wasn't unwatchable. It was just, you're not going to be able to get Let It Go again. And I think they sort of blatantly tried with Into the Unknown, which, and it was good. She belts it like she did in the first movie. But, like you guys said, her voice is aggressive and just not really for me. And I'm just like, are you going to make a third movie and, sing even louder? I just don't know if that's possible. But it was just one of those things. None of the music really in the whole movie seemed as interesting as the music in the first one. Because neither of them are really my vibe or my style. But I did find, the lyrics in the first movie more interesting than the lyrics in the second movie. In the second one, I thought the cinematography, all of the magic usage was breathtaking. It was so beautiful. And I can see, sitting down with a young kid watching this would be absolutely awesome, because you could put a kid at any age in front of this movie and just watch the eyes pop out of their head because it's so beautiful. It just sort of seemed like, just a little bit of a watered down version of the first one. But I appreciate how it ended, and I enjoyed the story overall. It was good. Hearty thumbs up.
Yeah, I understand what you mean by watered down, but I can appreciate what they were trying to do. Yeah. It did come across a little watered down, I think, because it wasn't a traditional, there wasn't like a villain per se. This was much more of a, an enhanced magical journey tying to the backstory. Instead of having, good versus evil per se. I mean, there were some evil elements. There were some bad things that had to be righted. But there wasn't, a full-blown villain that they had to defeat in this. But I think instead they just, it was much more of like a fantasy adventure than it was a good versus evil thing. And it had some like adventurous, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter type elements to it with the scenery and the places and the enchanted forests. And even Elsa, you were talking earlier about, she's just kind of there maybe in the first one. But in this one, I mean, it was like superhero powers. I mean, you really saw that she is in full control of her abilities, and it was cool watching her do all the things that she now can do with her ice abilities. I really kind of appreciated that. She was the Force was very strong with Elsa in this one. I would feel very safe standing next to her if there was something going on with her having those abilities in full control. So I understand what you mean by that. I think I wasn't necessarily as into it as the first one, but throughout I appreciated what they were doing because, it would have been very easy just to go, all right, what kind of villain can we drop in here and have Elsa and Anna take them on? But I kind of liked the fact that they tried something different.
Yeah, it's funny, Regina, you didn't think the music was as memorable, because I'll tell you, I do enjoy the songs from this one a lot more, whereas I think the last one was all Let It Go, and I was like, oh my God, I don't want to hear that anymore, because all I do is hear it. And also, I think you can tell how good a Disney song is whenever you take it out of context and have someone else perform it. On the Frozen soundtrack, Demi Lovato did it, and that's a lady with a really impressive set of pipes who just delivered the song more or less straight, and you're like, yeah, it doesn't, without the snow and the ice and her running off into the hills, it don't really mean the same, Whereas this is a little cringe, and so this is just between us. You're not allowed to tell anyone or share this, but theater kids gone bad, Panic at the Disco, Brandon Urie, with his version of Into the Unknown at the end. Like, man, I was digging it. I was like, oh, what a great arrangement of this song. Why would you say that about a song? Well, you'd say it if you liked it. And like the Casey Musgraves version of All Is Found, and not that the Evan Rachel Wood version at the beginning, the lullaby, was terrible. It wasn't. It was really good. I really enjoyed it, and I thought the songs had a bit more listenability. And the 80s pastiche in the middle with the Jonathan Groff song, "Lost in the Woods." Ugh. When he goes like full on Chicago, he gets his Peter Cetera on, and you're my inspiration. Or you're the inspiration thing. Vibes of that all over, and the Bohemian Rhapsody bit. And I was reading about that bit where they said he didn't get a song in the first one, not really, because reindeers are better than people, just like lasted for a second. So they were like, when we do this one, we're going to multi-track his voice, so you get like 18 Jonathan Groffs singing to you at once. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even like Glee, but I like him on this. It's really good. So, it surprised me how much I did like it. I think the flaw was the story, tell you the truth. It was kind of a redemptive thing, and I get that sort of atonement, making amends for things in years past. I don't get why it happened. I don't think that was ever explained. Okay, cool. That's why you got the magic, I suppose. But I don't know why you're hearing that now, and I don't know why. Yeah, right. And it's like, the fire thing. Well, that's the salamander, and the water thing. Well, that's the water spirit, the Nock, the horse. And Gale with the leaves. Yeah, Olaf has a chat with Gale. And the earth thing, you're like, well, wait, there's the rock things, that the earth giants, which are fantastic. I love them because
it reminded me of Gorignac from Galaxy Quest.
Yeah, right. I got that. And like Iron Giant vibes as well, maybe. And I kind of dug all that too. But then I don't get why all the rocks were moving, all the cobbles were moving back in Arendelle back in the day, because, I thought they each did the one thing, like the spirits are responsible for their own little bit. And so I think some of these things was like plot magic, nudge it along, let's get them on a mission, let's get them on a quest. But I think if you're the age that this movie is intended at, you're probably not interested. You're probably like just digging it because Olaf gets more smart lines. The interplay between, Kristoff and Swathen is really, really nice. And, they make Anna a little sassier, and that's kind of cool. I enjoyed it for what it was. It doesn't make any sense when you break it down. No. But I thought the songs were solid, and I thought it was a really kind of enjoyable romp. I didn't enjoy it as much as Aladdin 2, which was weird, but I did enjoy it.
Yeah, those rock giants. I also thought of, the big rock-eating giant in the Never-Ending Story.
Yes,
a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah. See, it's got all these fundamentals for a really cool story. It's just, like you said, it's not made for us, for people that are going to, tear this story apart for plot holes. So I think it's got a lot of, interesting qualities. It's a little bit lost sort of dialogue wise. And some of the characters just become kind of straight up superfluous in this movie. But you've got to have them because they're the faces that the kids are looking for. You know what I mean? Like, they've got to be here somehow. We've got to write them in somehow. So some of the dialogue is a little bit useless and a little bit clunky, but it leads you into these scenes with pretty stunning imagery. I mean, the stuff with, you know, the frozen moments in time and the water having memory, that was all pretty beautiful, admittedly. And it's just, you sort of had to listen to a little bit of a dumb conversation to get there. And that's okay.
Well, you know, the other thing, I have to say, it started to hit me a little hard, and I also started to think about Infinity War when Olaf was dying.
Oh, yeah.
Because she's holding him in her arms, almost like Tony Stark holding Spider-Man, as as little pieces of him start to drift off.
You know, when we were watching it, my boyfriend turned around and snapped his finger during that scene.
I mean, I was really getting kind of broken up about that. I was like, this is terrible. I don't want to see Olaf die.
And she kind of scoots him in to hold him closer, and you're just like, dang, that's just really sweet.
Yeah, that was an interesting part of the story. But, you know, it was in that part of the whole storyline where, you know, things have to get really, really tough. And next thing you know, Anna has to kind of move on without her sister and without Olaf. So it definitely empowered Anna to cross the finish line and make this work. So, but it was just, if they were going for emotion in that scene, I think they pulled it off, especially if you've watched Infinity War, because that's immediately what I thought of. I think the way people or the way everybody is kind of setting this up, I think we're all kind of in a consensus that it's good for a sequel, but it's really good for a sequel to the audience that loved the first one and couldn't wait to see this one.
Mm-hmm. But it's, you know, if you're not the intended audience, it's still perfectly enjoyable. If you're stuck at home and you've got Disney Plus, watch it.
Or maybe you've watched it 15 times because that's what your kids want to watch.
Or maybe don't watch it for anything. Never again.
You'd be missing out on possibly some of the best end credits I've seen in an animated feature for a minute, though. As I say, those songs, they do hold up with the other versions. And yeah, the post-credit sort of stinger with, I'm not going to ruin it, with it's Olaf, so I'll say that much. Josh Gad does all the heavy lifting in that movie, and it's a really nice coda to the whole thing. I really enjoy it.
You were just mentioning Olaf, and it reminded me of the scene when, you know, they've just sort of escaped that sort of fire lizard, and Olaf has those children just kind of sticking things into his face.
Yes.
And he basically just says something along the lines of, this is us controlling things we can control in a situation we cannot control. And I was just like, that hits pretty deep, Olaf, I know.
Yeah, the little salamander, the little fire salamander, it's funny I brought up Tangled earlier because there were times where he made me think of Pascal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tangled, yeah.
Yeah, I tell you, the other thing that was notable to me from that was for how much I enjoyed the songs and how much I enjoyed Josh Gad. Back in the day, they were all supposed to collaborate on a Muppet series for Disney Plus. It was going to be, what was it, Adam Horowitz who's doing the new Gaston show with him, formerly from Once Upon a Time, and Kristen Anderson Lopez and Bobby Lopez were going to do songs for that. And now I just wonder what that would have been.
I know.
After enjoying that so much, I just think, that's wasted potential right there.
Dadgum creative differences. They change showrunners or they change the people at the top and they no longer like what the other guy was doing. And if you don't change, we're not doing it. And they went, okay, we're not doing it.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, it's very fitting that the show ended on a Muppet note because that's what we're focusing on next week. We're going to have a little fun discussing something that I guess was taking place on the internet a few days ago when people were debating who would win a fight between the Muppets and the Sesame Street characters. So we're going to talk about that next week, but the other thing we're doing is we're all revisiting the Great Muppet Caper. In the meantime, remember we are on Twitter at Disney Plus Cast. You can follow us there. We're also online at DisneyPlusStreamcast.com. You'll find episodes there as well as ways to reach out to us with your comments, thoughts on anything, or maybe even a suggestion of something to cover on the show. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay well, and please join us again next week for another episode of the Disney Plus Streamcast.